This term we're going to be looking at animation techniques, and the first animation technique I wanted to look at was a simple one called keyframe animation. First up, along the bottom of your screen there, you'll see there is a scale. That's our animation controller, and you'll see that currently there are 60 frame or 100 frames of animation there. 100, sorry, not 60, 100. If we're wanting to have room for more frames of animation, we can actually do that with our little time configuration icon here, the little clock icon. If I click that, you'll see that a time configuration window comes up, which allows me to change the number of frames in my animation sequence and also change the speed of it. It's currently just set at normal speed with 100 frames, so we'll leave it at that. Okay, now what we're going to do is to animate a bouncing ball. So I'll begin by placing a small sphere near the middle there, and I'll place that right in the center there of the axis. I'll do that, the reason why I'm doing that will be obvious in a minute. Just want to put it somewhere where it's easy for me to find its position again. Okay, so there we are, there it's in the middle. Now, what we want to do is to set up some key frames and allow 3ds Max to fill in the frames between those to create the animation sequence for us. So we've currently got our controller here set to the 0th or 1st frame, and we'll leave the ball there, and I'll put it in set key mode so that we can set a key there. I'll put plus key, the plus key icon there, plus sign with a key, and that will create a frame there which is locked in. Now let's do another one. I'll lift the ball up to the top of its bounce, and I'll move across to the 50th frame. I'll just lift it up again, and we'll set a key there. Now we'll move along to the last frame, and we'll put the ball back in its original position, and this is why you'll notice I set it in position 0 before, because it's easy to find, and we'll set another key there. Okay, now that's 3 frames are set, one for the bottom of its bounce, top, and then back to the bottom again. Now we have some controllers here which we can use to control the animation play. So I'll press the play button there, and you'll see our ball rise and fall, and it cycles through that animation endlessly until we stop it. Okay, now that's our bouncing ball. It's not very realistic though, is it? So we'll probably do a little bit of work with it. One thing you notice about rubber balls in particular is that they do compress a little bit when they hit the ground. So we might put that in. We'll go back into set key mode, and we'll actually use the compression tool and compress that ball a little bit in the Z axis, and then reset that key. Okay. Then we'll go back to halfway, and it's gone back to its normal size, and then we'll go through to 100, and we'll compress that again, and we'll try and compress it the same amount, but we can fix that later. Okay, so let's put that out of set key mode, and we'll play that sequence, and you'll see now that the ball rises and falls, and it squashes a bit as it gets to the ground. Now it's still not terribly realistic, so what we want to do now is to begin to edit that animation sequence, and we do that using graph editors. You'll notice there's a graph editors menu at the top here, so we'll just click on that, and there's a few graph editors we can use. We'll actually use the track view curve editor, so I'll click on that, and the track view curve editor will open up. Now this gives us some curves which describe the motion of our ball. And you'll notice in particular there's 2 curves there. This top one is actually the squash action of the ball. You can probably see that if I scroll down. There we go. So you can see the ones that are actually selected. And we've got the squash action of the sphere selected. And one of the things you'll notice is that I haven't actually done a good job of this. First up, the squash actions are not quite the same there as it is there. Now when we play that sequence, that causes a little kind of a jump when it changes from the 100th back to the 0th frame. So I might edit that slightly. So what I need to do is I need to click on lock or unlock tangents. Actually, what I need to do is to make sure this is clicked, the show tangents is open. It is at the moment, but if yours isn't, you'll need to click that to open tangents, and that'll be useful in a little while. Now we have a button here to add keys, and we have a button here to move keys. So I'll make sure move keys is clicked, and I'll just move these a little bit, and I'll just drag that key up so that's right on that horizontal line, and I'll drag this key up so it's right on the horizontal line too, and that will give us the same amount of squashing at each end. Now the other problem we have is that the ball doesn't squash when it when it's coming down. It actually squashes when it hits the ground. So we want to make that squash action a little bit more accentuated. So we'll use the add key thing here. You'll notice there's a lot of icons I'm not talking about at this stage, and you probably will need to use those later, but you can look that up for yourself when you've got particular things you want to do. Anyway, I'll add a key there, and I'll add a key just there. Okay, so now we'll use our move key, and I'll select that bottom key, and I'll drag that up to the top, and you'll notice that it keeps it fairly smooth, but it means that that squashing happens just as it hits the ground. I'll drag this one up as well. Okay, now you can position those nicely because you've got a key on the green, the squash in the other direction, and that allows you to line it up nicely so that the squash action is nicely lined up. There we go. Perfect. Is that perfect? Oh, yeah, pretty good. Okay. Actually, it's not good. I'll just move that a little bit here. I'm just trying to balance this out by eye a little bit so that that length there is the same as that length there, and it's not. So I'll just pull that across a little bit there. Just want to get these as nice and symmetrical as I can. Okay, it needs to go a bit further actually because I can see those markers. A little bit further maybe? No, back a little bit. Okay. Still playing with it. Sorry guys, be patient. Okay, now let's see how that's looking. I'll minimize that for a minute, and we will play our animation and see what happens. See, it goes up, it goes down, but now it does that little squash right as it hits the ground, which is what you'd expect it to do. Okay, right, now the other thing is that the actual bouncing action is not terribly realistic, and the reason for that, as you can see here, is that 3ds Max likes to create nice smooth curves when it fills in animation sequences, and bouncing is not really that smooth. So what we might do is we will click that, and you'll notice that when I click that, you can see a little tangent appear here, and I can click on that and drag that around. Oops, that's the wrong thing. What I might do is actually hide the other motions a little bit. I'll just undo what I've done there. So I'll make sure that we're only seeing the Z position. So I'll click there, and now we can only see the Z curve. That makes life a bit easier. Okay, so now we'll select that, and you can see the tangent much better now, and it's easier to grab. Now I can pull that up, and in doing that, I can change the shape of that curve. I'll do the same thing here. Pull that up, and get them looking nice and symmetrical. Now there is another tangent tool which is kind of handy. We won't use it today, but I'll just show it to you. If you go to the tangents menu, there is an option to break tangents, and that's kind of useful if you want to make things a bit pointy. So I'll click on that one, and I'll select break tangents, and that now allows me to actually move individual tangents without causing all the other changes. Okay. Make sure I haven't moved that too much. There we go. So that's got that organized. Now let's have a look at how our ball bounces now. So we will play our animation, and you can see it it's actually much more natural bouncing action. Now I could probably play with that a little bit more, but I won't bother at the moment because I'll let you have a little bit of a play with that. The other thing which I can do to make it look a bit better too is to maybe speed it up a bit. So I'll go into my time configuration and I'll kick that up to say 2 times, and I'll play that. And that's already starting to look a little bit better now. 4 times might be even better. Okay, so that's my ball bouncing. Now, rendering these is a little bit different too. If we go into the render menu, we need to do a bit of a change to our render setup. So I'll click that, and you'll see here that in the render setup menu, up until now we've just been doing a single screen. What we really want to do is to render the range from 0 to 100 frames, or just the active time sequence would work as well, but I'll just click there. Okay, now it will now do 100 frames, one after the other, but it needs a place to store the render. So we'll go down to the render output, and I'll click the files button here, and this will open up my files area. So I'll just call this ball, and I need to tell it what it's going to be rendered as. So it'll be an AVI file. Okay, so we'll render it as an AVI file. I've already got one called ball, so just so I don't get an error message, I'll call it ball 2. Okay, click save, and we'll just use the DV video encoder. There are a few other compressors you could use, but that one will be right for today. Okay, so now when I click the render button, you will see that it will begin to render the ball 100 times, starting with frame 0 and working the way through. So it takes quite a while. Okay, I won't sit here and watch it the whole time. We'll actually stop that. And when that's been rendered, you can actually play that using your VLC player and save it as an MP4 and upload it to YouTube or whatever you want to do with it. Now what I'd like you to do today is to have a little bit of a play with that keyframe rendering. It'd be nice if you could get your ball bouncing and then maybe have it so it's bouncing on some sort of a platform or a plane. Maybe include a light so that there's a shadow. Put some materials on the ball so it looks like a nice ball. You might, if you're very adventurous, even manage to arrange for your ball to bounce down some stairs by putting in a whole series of keyframes as it goes doink, 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 doink down the stairs. That'll be a lot of fun. So see how we go this lesson with your bouncing ball. Okay,